So you are back with our Sunday sessions with me, Sam Shiner. So this is the last of our series of the Sunday sessions with Northern Exposure. And the sponsors of this series have been Golden Robot Records. The last interview that I do is with the CEO of the record label, and I'm delighted to welcome Mark. So hi, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honour.
Thanks, Sam. You're saving the best for last. Let's be upfront.
Yeah. I know we've had a chat before we started the interview, and I think we absolutely could be saving the best for last.
I don't know if it's true, but not nice of you to say anyway. I appreciate it.
So Golden Robot Records is a relatively new venture, and it's grown absolutely massively within the last few years. So tell us a bit about like what made you want to start a record label and how it's been like over the last few years.
So I've been involved in some big ventures in my life, and I've been involved in building up some big companies. And I've always had a love for music. I've always been crazy on music. Everything to me starts and ends with Led Zeppelin. As you can see here, the full Zeppelin, including Bonham's signatures, sits above me every day. So, you know, being an entrepreneur and loving music, etc., I used to own in a different life a whole lot of pubs. I had about 30 hotels, and through those pubs, we used to do a lot of music. We'd bring a lot of music into Australia, a lot of big American bands, etc. And quite a few years ago now, my son, who's 19 now and works for us, when he was 9, was on Australia's Got Talent, which is like Britain's Got Talent.
Oh, wow.
And he was at a very early age an incredible drummer. He's one of the best drummers in the world these days, but he was an incredible drummer, or 8 or 9. You can get him on YouTube. You can find him, Mark Alexander, and you'll find him, this little blonde kid. He was about this big. So we ended up on this show, had a great backing band, nearly won it. And when he popped out of that, I thought, well, what am I going to do with this kid? I don't want him to be a novelty. I want him to have a legacy. So I put him into the studio with a couple of well-known artists in Australia, and they popped out and made an album. Now, Jagger, my son, was 10, and this is the
Your
album.
son's called Jagger?
My son's Jagger, and my daughter is Honey. They made this album, and when I shopped this album around, can we swear on this, Sam?
Of course you can.
Nobody gave a hoot. So
nobody gave a flying hoot about it.
Yeah, nobody gave an absolute hoot. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll do it myself. I started with some really, local distribution, got it manufactured. And when we were sitting there trying to think of a name for the company, I was in the studio. And when they all came out of the studio, Jagger and the two fellas, they were in their 40s. So they were older, an experienced musician. I gave them all a little golden robot. So he was sitting on the speaker. So when we thought, what do we call this thing? Golden Robot Records. So
it's one of those moments where it was just like the answer staring you right in the face.
Totally. So that's how it started. So if you can see this, you can see that that's Golden Robot 0001. That was the first ever release from Golden Robot. So, and I can tell you now, this is, 6-7 years old, and you pick this album up and you look at track 2, Ronnie Biggs. Still one of the best rock and roll songs I've ever heard. Anyway, so that's how it started. So without boring your listeners...
Not at all. This is really, honestly, this is great.
All right. Well, I don't want to put...
You crack on.
I don't want to put all your 7 million listeners to sleep. I know I'm exaggerating.
Just by a million or so.
What's a million between friends? It's all good. I just thought, you know what? I'm going to go hard with this. And that's my personality. I didn't want to have one pub. I wanted 30. I don't want to have one band. I want to, control the music scene. It's not from an egotistical point of view. It's just I like creating. I'm a creator. I'm either going to spend a lot of money, and, we've spent millions of dollars on this, and I'm either going to be the world's greatest rock and roll philanthropist, or I'm going to be have successful record labels. So
did you have no experience in running a record label then?
No experience at all. But as long as you surround yourself by the A team, then you're okay. So those early days, we made mistakes and we had the wrong distribution and we dealt with some people we shouldn't have dealt with. We had some bands that we couldn't control, and plenty of mistakes made in the early days and plenty of things that we screwed up. But there was plenty of things we did well. So we had a really good foundation. So for the first year I went along, signing Australian bands. Yeah. So I got a good local roster, and then I was introduced to a very successful American record executive who went through the ranks in the 70s and 80s and 90s and discovered everyone from Nickelback to Bon Jovi to Pantera, et cetera, et cetera. Him and I worked very well together from 2016 to 2019. And we put in incredible distribution into place. We put 12 PR and marketing teams around the world. We identified around the world where we needed the hubs, opened up a couple of offices, got some extra staff, and I just went hard and spent the money, so we ended up with this great roster. I got ripped off by a few people along the way. Doing business in Los Angeles can be very interesting. Guys coming to me and saying, hey, I've got a contract with this band, pays 50,000, and you'll get the rights to 4 albums, and then you sign them and announce it, and then the band calls you and goes, I don't know who the fuck these people are. They're not involved with you. So that happened.
Right.
It was, you've got to watch what you're doing and how you do it, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, there's a few artists out there that we're giving money to that never delivered. And today I wouldn't let them get away with it. But in the early days, you were finding your feet, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, we built it well. And then, now we're sitting there with this great roster of, Filter and he's a billion seller. Hot Shell Ray, I just opened up a label with. So we've got 12 labels and over 400 bands. The way that it works is you've got Golden Robot Global Entertainment. You've got Golden Robot Records as the main label, and then you've got the sub-labels all the way around it. We've got the top country label in Australia. We've got one of the top metal labels in Europe. And, we've concentrated the last year and a half, 2 years on our roster in the UK. I love our bands in the UK. I love them all. And I think, all the boys from San Quentin, the Cavalcade, and the Now, Hague, Graces Collide, Dirty Laces, all those.
Dirty Laces are amazing. So are you quite still, even though you're kind of top dog, are you still quite heavily involved in decision making when it comes to
100%? Can do between 6 and 10 Zooms a day, just with bands brainstorming. And that's one thing that I'm really proud of, is that we still are in the trenches with the bands, brainstorming with them. And the difference between us and, say, a couple of local, look, and I'm very honest and transparent. I look at some of these bands that we approach and they go, oh no, we want to stick to a local label. And I go, why the fuck would you want to just stick to a local label in the UK? Because that's all they concentrate is the UK. So there's got these huge markets in Europe and America. So they think they're a big dick in a little pond, and they're not. Big fish in a little pond, not a big fish in a little pond. A big fish in a little pond. It's such a huge world out there, and that you've got to discover it. We've got bands in Israel, South Africa, South America, obviously America and Europe and Australia, Japan. So the one thing I'm proud of, Sam, and you can talk about all this stuff for hours and hours, the one thing I'm proud of is this: we're like a large rock and roll family. So we have our arms around everyone around the world. Yes, we've got great distribution and great PR. And of course, we're a record label. If we weren't doing that, we just close the doors. But it's the camaraderie and it's the family that we've created. If you join the label, Sam and the Samettes join the label, right? You had this great rock band. You would find Wild Street in New York would be welcoming you. Farewell to Fear from LA would welcome you. Bands from Australia, Shotgun Mistress, etc., would welcome. So you've got all this interaction from bands on social media. When Sam and the Samettes drop an album or drop a single or drop an EP, and you put it on your socials to say you're 25,000 followers on Instagram, not only do you look at the intrinsic value of Golden Robot and the other labels, you've actually got the reach of all the other bands and artists that promote you as well. So no one can come close to us with the reach that we've got, because everybody's in it together. And I haven't seen that with any other label. It's fantastic.
That's amazing. Well, I started managing a band myself in May this year. I've never done it before, so it's all new to me. So like, we know how difficult it is just to get anywhere in the music industry. So it's just really interesting.
Yeah,
my band's a great band.
I take my what's the name of the band?
This is not what it's about. But no, they're amazing, and like they're going to be really interested.
What are they called?
They're called the Raz. They're from Scotland.
Right, the Raz.
The Raz. R-A-H. The Raz.
Yes, I've heard of them for sure.
They're so good. So basically they released their album through this like Kickstarter campaign, and they messaged me on Instagram to say, do you know of any good managers, Sam? And I said, well, I know people that manage bands, but I can't really speak for them whether they're any good or anything. And they were like, well, actually, we're wondering if you wanted to do it. And I said, I've never managed a band before in my life. And they were like, yeah, but we think you'd be really great at it. So we're getting there and got on to like major festivals and stuff next year. But you're right. And the Gallagher brothers from Oasis. Do you know Oasis, the band?
Oasis? No, I never heard of that. No. And then he pulls out his Oasis 25th anniversary coin. Of course. What rock
Of
would
course
I
you have.
if I hadn't heard of Oasis? I love Oasis.
I was genuinely like, oh my God, this is going to be really awkward.
No, Oasis. No, I love
So
Oasis.
the third Gallagher brother, Paul, me
Yeah.
and him chat quite a lot about the music scene and stuff.
Did you have to work your way to the third brother?
I started on Paul. I nearly met Noel once, but he shut his caravan door.
Well, I don't think he realizes you got 7 million followers on your podcast.
I know, if he did, he'd be like, Sam, can I come on?
100%. You go 7 million as he closed the door and he'd open it back up. Sorry. Oh, that's sad. That's sad.
He talks a lot about streaming numbers, and if they've not got those kind of streaming numbers and the views and everything. I don't know if you've got any advice. I don't know if you've got any advice for bands that are just kind of like, maybe not necessarily starting out, but they're kind of established in their own little area.
Yeah.
They want to get out and expand. Like, what have you got any advice?
I've got advice. And what we'll do is, if you can just put my address down the bottom, let you know where to send the checks. And I charge a £5 for advice.
And a free band t-shirt.
That's it. No, look, this is the way I look at it. There's three things you've brought up, and I'll mention them quickly because I'm getting old and I forget it. I forget what I'm going to say. The first thing is, there is an issue with management in the world, and there's a big difference between top-level management and bottom-level management. There is some horrible managers out there. Horrible. There's managers that should stick to driving lorry trucks and not ever be managers. And I'm not trying to be mean or rude or anything. I'm not. The issue is this. They're not management. So they're making decisions for a group of people that isn't in the best interest of the band. And that can put you back years, and you've got to at least have half an idea of what you're doing. I've seen some decisions in management that is absolutely horrible. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you 50 examples. I'll give you 5,000 examples. We were going to be on here for 20 minutes. I told you an hour and a half. Anyway, so I had a band that I'd been chasing in America for 6 months, 20 Zoom calls, back and forwards with a lawyer, with the contract, back and forwards. Now, Golden Robot Records, I believe, has put itself in a very, very strong position in the world. Why would you want to go with fucking Sony or Warner or Universal, where you're just a round coin in a round hole, where you can deal with a major league independent that can pivot and move, and we see a crack in the wall, drive a truck through it. We can put money here. We can do this. We can do that. I'm signing this band in America, and I think that they've definitely got something, no doubt about it. And the manager, at the final death of just talking about everything to do with the contract, says to me, I want a clause in the contract that if a major comes along and wants to sign us, you'll just release us from the contract. So I could spend $100,000 on these guys. I could spend $1 million on these guys, but Sony comes along, they can just walk away. It's like, are you out of your mind? You know, I understand what he was trying to do, but that's just the most insulting thing you can do with a label that you're about to sign with. Absolutely. So I obviously said, no, thanks, all the best, see you later. So now they're in no better position than they were. And I can give you so many different examples of bad management that just was about the manager's view, not what was best for the band. The best band managers I see, and I work with a lot of them, and there's a lot of great people in the UK, are about the band. It's not about them.